Let's go for a launch, 0 to 60. It was quite quick. 60. Not bad at all. Hi guys, what's up? Welcome back to another video. Today you join me in the 2023 Hyundai IONIQ 5. This was one of the defining cars for the brand in recent years and have won several awards including Car of the Year 2022. So I'm here to determine whether it's worthy of that title and whether you should still look at buying one today. Now, this car has been updated for the 2024-2025 model year, and the one I'm driving here is actually the kind of pre-facelift version, but I'm going to be talking kind of a bit about both. Now, this car is built on the same platform as the IONIQ 6, the Kia EV6, Kia EV9, and also the Genesis GV60, to name a few. And it's proving quite popular. All of those cars have some really good merit and have received relatively favourable reviews across the board. So I'm going to give a bit of a rundown of some of the specs and the powertrain options, but bear in mind that some of these vary based on the age of the vehicle, so be careful when you're shopping around in terms of battery capacity and stuff like that. And the other thing to bear in mind as well is that pricing has changed slightly as well in the UK. Some of the earlier pre-facelift models come with a smaller capacity battery, which has around 238 miles of range, and that one I would probably avoid at this point. So as it stands at the moment with the new model, the entry level is a rear-wheel drive 63 kilowatt hour with 170 horsepower and 273 miles of range. There's also a long range version which has an 84 kilowatt hour battery, 228 horsepower and around 320 miles of range. And the one I'm driving here today is the all-wheel drive 325 horsepower option, 307 miles of range and 0 to 60 in around 5.1 seconds. So actually relatively quick. There's also now the range-topping IONIQ 5N, which is absolutely ludicrous. 641 horsepower, 0 to 60 in 3.4 seconds, and that is making headlines all across the world for its dynamic capability. So that's one to watch. Hopefully I can get one of those to check out soon. So all of the standard models have 350 Newton meters of torque as standard, and I did actually try the rear-wheel drive option in the IONIQ 6, and I was really impressed with how it handled. In terms of range, it's kind of middle of the road nowadays. Like, there's a few cars cropping up that have a more impressive range as standard, so it's something to bear in mind when you're making your purchase decision. But thankfully, across the board, you've got up to 350 kilowatt fast charging, which can get you from 10 to 80% in around 18 minutes. The largest battery capacity version will 100% charge in around 13 hours on a standard home charger, so not too bad if you're just doing it overnight. Unlike the IONIQ 6, there are a few more trim levels to choose from, and it can get a little bit confusing. So they've introduced a lower-end advanced model which starts at £39,000, and that one actually still has really generous specifications standard. You get things like the dual 12.3-inch displays, parking sensors front and rear camera, lane keep assist, smart cruise control, highway driving assist, keyless entry, dual zone climate control, LED lights all round, cloth interior, automatic wipers, and heated seats. So really, there's quite a lot of spec there as a standard car, and you can also spec the tech packs as well. Stepping up to the premium model at £42,000, you get part leather interior, vehicle to load which has a normal plug socket inside the car which is handy, electric tailgate, sun blinds in the rear and a heated steering wheel. The N-line model is the sportier trim, starting at around £47,000, 20-inch alloys and sportier looks on the outside, as well as a bit more tech on the inside. And then you step up to the ultimate trim at £49,000. That has things like the head-up display, the digital rear-view mirror, which is a camera rear-view mirror, Bose audio system, and the absolute top of the range, the N-Line S, starts from around £52,000. That comes with the 360-degree camera, which is one of the best in class, I would say, parking assist, which means that you can actually park the car automatically, and it comes with a fantastic blind view monitoring cameras, which when you indicate comes up with a blind spot camera in the dashboard. That one also has electric rear sliding seats and a sunroof as standard too. One thing to bear in mind though is that the blind view cameras and the 360 camera, which are two of the best spec options I think on this car, are available as a separate tech pack, so you can spend 1,500 quid to get that pretty much across the board. There's also for £2,500 the Zen pack. Now that one includes the reclining front seats, which are a really nice option to be fair, and something that I've really enjoyed on the Kia EV6. You can literally recline them right back, and they also have a little bit of a leg rest built in as well. If you spend £1,000 more, you can also get digital wing mirrors, which personally I wouldn't really recommend. It's not my thing. So my advice would be definitely have a little look at the spec sheets and the configurator on the Hyundai website, but again, this does vary based on the model year as well, so just have a little look at the spec sheet before you make a purchase. So let's talk exterior styling then. Now this is quite an interesting car because it's like a boxy hatchback shape, but it is kind of small SUV sized, and that kind of really reflects when you step on the inside as well. It's a bit of a TARDIS in here. Now the thing is it's going to be a bit subjective, right? The looks aren't for everyone, and I've had mixed reviews on that. Personally, I kind of prefer the looks of the IONIQ 6. I know it's a slightly odd looking car. I've got a full review on that car on the channel as well. That is a bit more of an impractical shape though, because it's got a normal boot rather than a hatchback like this one, and this one is a bit taller and kind of easier to get in and out of. But yeah, it's interesting because it looks, in terms of shape, like a kind of older, boxier car. It's almost a bit like the old Renault shapes and stuff like that. But the thing is that it is inflated. It's definitely a lot bigger than a normal hatch. You know, you can put it next to something like a Qashqai and it kind of feels around the same size when you're actually sitting in traffic, but it doesn't look it at all. They've also gone for this kind of retro look with the pixel light bar at the back and the integrated kind of light bar at the front for the daytime running lights, which you can't really tell is there. And overall it's a kind of boxy finish, but the matte paint I really think sets it off as well. This one's finished in gravity gold, which is more of a kind of matte silver colour, like a champagne almost. It's around £900 as an option, but it's one of the most popular colours for the car, and I can see why. I really like the design of the LEDs front and rear, and I just think it makes for something that's quite interesting to look at. I even like the way they've done the badging in kind of like a 3D effect on the rear of the car as well. The boxy shape makes it quite easy to place as well, and I've got decent visibility, and even though there's a big C-pillar, I've got enough kind of visibility with the big side mirrors and also the reverse cam that I don't really need to worry about it in most situations. And this model does have blind spot warnings on the mirrors, although it doesn't have the cameras fitted. I definitely don't think the looks are for everyone. I'm not a big fan of the wheels on this model either. I definitely think the larger wheels, although they do have an impact on ride, definitely make it look nicer. Personally, I do of course prefer the looks of the IONIQ 6, but that's just me. They're both kind of weird looking cars in the grand scheme of things, but it does definitely stand out and people do look at this as it goes past. It definitely is a little bit more subtle if you go for like a normal paint job for sure, but I think if I were to have one, I would go for something like this as a spec. I'd love to know your thoughts on it, whether you think it's a really good looking car or whether you're not too sure. The shape of it though does make for a really practical vehicle, and although the floor is quite high up because of the battery pack, it's completely flat in here, which is a really nice thing. When you step inside the interior, it is quite familiar to other Hyundai cars of recent, but you know, there's a few extra quirks and features, and it is quite spacious in here. There's not really much of a center console. It's kind of got cup holders raised here in the middle with some USB charging on and a wireless charging pad, and I've got this large center area here which you can kind of move out the way, or it's got like an integrated pouch which you can see in there. It's a nice kind of place to sit. Like, the driving position is good and I can rest my elbows. I've got loads of adjustment in this seat, and this seat is really comfortable, electric lumbar, and even though this doesn't have the more luxurious seats, I've still got enough kind of capability to adjust it to my liking for a long journey. Like I said, I'm pretty happy with visibility, and overall the driving position for me is great. I've even got the electric tilt on the thigh support, so I can really get a nice driving position for me. Even though I'm kind of 6 foot and I've got lanky legs, I can get away with it quite nicely, and I feel super comfortable sitting here. The Genesis rivals do have slightly nicer seats, and maybe even the Kia, like the EV6 has some of the nicest seats that I've sat in a modern car, and that's no exaggeration. But again, the one I drove was spec'd with the Zen pack, if you like, with the reclining seats as well. So the overall seat ergonomics are quite nice, and the material quality is decent. Like, everything up here feels quite nice. Down the bottom there are some cheap plastics, but a lot of them are relatively sustainable materials, which is nice. And everywhere that I touch feels quite good. There's even this kind of material on the door which looks like suede, but actually is like a, I don't know, like a hard plastic, but it looks good. And the touch points on the steering wheel are good. You've got kind of this canvas material on the middle and soft touch plastics on the top of the dash. It's all quite decent to touch. The design of it I don't think is for everyone. There's a little bit of ambient lighting, but it doesn't look particularly posh in here. This one has the half cloth, half leather, and the cloth material is quite interesting. It's not a normal cloth. It's quite a smooth material, but I do quite like it. Would I call it particularly aesthetically pleasing? Not necessarily, but I do like the contrast of the white on the dash here, and also this one has a bright headliner, which does improve things a little bit in terms of how airy the cabin feels. Unfortunately, there are other elements where the ergonomics fall apart a little bit. For example, these two 12.3-inch displays are good. However, they are not necessarily angled towards me in a way that I would like. There's no alternate way of controlling this central infotainment screen, and whilst I mainly use it for Apple CarPlay, I would like to make some adjustments sometimes, and it's quite difficult to reach over to. It's not really angled towards me like it is in the Kia EV6, and in the Genesis GV60 you've actually got like a click wheel as well, sort of BMW iDrive style, which you can control everything with, as well as the touchscreen, which I much prefer, to be honest. And worse still is the climate controls. The climate controls in this are a little bit unforgivable, unfortunately, and it's one of the only cars that they do which has this. Like, all of their normal family cars have some physical dials for this still, but this one unfortunately not. It's got this kind of cluster of mess that is all touch sensitive and really annoying to use. And I also don't like, you have to press this little touch button that says warmer to then bring up the heated steering wheel and heated seat controls on the touch screen, and you can't make them go away unless you reach over and press it either. It's a bit laggy, it's a bit rubbish, and I think it's really the biggest letdown of this interior. Pretty much everything else I'm happy with though. The steering wheel is really nice, and you've got a drive mode button on there, which is really cool. And all the buttons here are actually physical buttons, even though they look capacitive, they're not, which I'm happy about. And the newer model has some scroll wheels on there, which is really nice too. You've got paddles on the back of the wheel which control your level of regen braking, which we'll go onto in a little bit. And when you move all the controls, they're all really well damped, and everything comes up on the screen to show you what you're doing, which is really nice. It means that if you're in the dark, you don't really need to worry about it. And this screen in front of me provides the essential information. It's a little bit busy, but actually does the trick, and I don't think it's too bad at all. It kind of shows all the basics that I need to know, and the rest of it is over here on this infotainment screen. The OS on there is really responsive, easy to use, and you've got quirks and features like you do on all the Hyundai Kia stuff, like drive profiles if you're sharing the car. You've also got like a quiet mode for if you've got kids asleep in the back, it will shut off the rear speakers. Things like voice memos so that you can make a note to yourself on the way home. Just little things like that. When you go into a tunnel, it will shut off the external air vents so that you don't get pollution inside the cabin. Just nice little quality of life features. And you've also got shortcut buttons, the stars, one on the steering wheel and one on the dash, and you can program that to a function of your choosing. There's a couple of physical controls for your media, including a track skip button and also a volume wheel. Gear select is just by my right knee here, and it's an easy to use thing with a parking button on the end, which automatically applies the parking brake, which is good. Overall, it's a really easy system to use. The thing you're hearing there was the lane keep assist. So it's got loads of systems as standard. Even the entry-level car has proper lane keep assist, one button driving assist for highway, which I love on these cars. You just press it once and it literally keeps in lane, and drive basically self-steers for you as long as you've got your hands on the wheel. You can press and enable it and disable it with one button. It's great. And also if you press and hold that button, it will disable the lane keep assist, which kind of tugs you back into lane and provides that audible warning and a vibration through the wheel. Front collision assist is standard as well, and you've got a bit of front trunk space in front of there. So a little bit of storage space in the middle. On the newer facelift car, they have redesigned this though, thankfully. So in the center, you've now got physical buttons for your heated steering wheel and your heated seats, which is a really welcome addition. As I mentioned, I don't really like currently using this system. Some cup holders, a little cubby down there with a 180 watt 12 volt socket and some USB charging. And you've also got a space in the door for a bottle, although it's not the largest space ever. And the glove box is more like a glove drawer, and it's quite deep and practical. Step into the back and you've got loads of headroom and loads of space for your legs as well. Although the floor is relatively high, it's completely flat, and this one has vehicle to load, so you've got a physical plug socket back there that you can plug a normal appliance into, which is really good. And also the rear seats do slide forward and backwards and also have a bit of recline. It is a little bit annoying how you have to go to the sides of the car to fold them completely down for the cargo area, but overall it's nice that you can adjust them and move them around a fair bit, and you've got that electric seat option on the higher end model. You've got ISOFIX points back there and some USB charging. Overall, it's a relatively practical space. As I say, it's a bit of a TARDIS in here. Like, there is plenty of space, and sitting back there for long journeys should feel relatively comfortable, I would have thought. Might be a bit narrow for 3 adults. And heading right to the back of the car, the cargo area is very practical as well. You've got a bit of a frunk in here for storing bits and bobs, but you've also got some underfloor storage in the boot for storing your charge cables, which is a really practical space. And it is a kind of shallow boot floor, but it does make loading really easily. And when the seats are folded, it's a really nice open space. You've got a cargo cover as well, which is retractable, and you can remove that. It's not quite as large of an area as in a Skoda Enyaq, but overall it's a practical space, easy to load, and I wouldn't have any complaints for most people. Because it's quite a boxy shaped car as well, it's practical to load it up quite high, and it's definitely going to be a much more practical space than the IONIQ 6. Even with those folding rear seats, it's quite a small load area in that car. You do notice though, in comparison to the IONIQ 6, that there are some differences in terms of the interior comfort and the kind of insulation of the cabin. So there's definitely more wind noise due to the boxy shape of this car, and it doesn't feel quite as stable on the motorway because it's not quite as slick. And the aerodynamic improvements that they made on the 6 to make it a really svelte car, it's even more aerodynamic in fact than a Tesla Model 3, and it's noticeable in the efficiency. You do notice that that one gets more miles range, and it does feel a little bit more stable on the motorway as well in comparison to this one. Right, let's get it in sport mode, and I'm going to give it a bit of a slingshot around this roundabout. Wow, really grips and goes. Obviously this one being the all-wheel drive model, it's kind of got that capability to just bite and go, and you can turn traction control fully off if you want to have a bit more fun with it as well. Now I can imagine that the N model is just absolutely sensational, as everyone is describing, but this one is more than powerful enough, to be honest. And in the sport mode it really is very responsive. Like, it's very, as you can see just from how I'm kind of thrown back there, I was going from sort of 50 mile an hour and that was a quick pull there. It's more than powerful enough. And like I said, I've tried the rear-wheel drive version in the IONIQ 6 as well, and I was really impressed with how it felt, because you could really have a little bit of fun with it in a controlled way. It's obviously a heavy car, so when you're kind of going along and you start braking, you do notice that when you're trying to come to a stop. And even the N model is shown to be kind of, that's his weak point, is the braking efficiency, which is a bit of a shame, but it's kind of understandable for a heavy car. Now, in terms of the rest of the driving dynamics, it's good. It's just not as good as the IONIQ 6. Now, the EV6 is a more firm car as well. So this one, you do feel the suspension is a little bit more plush. So if you're looking for something a little bit more of a softer ride day to day, then this is definitely a little bit softer than the EV6, which is like the sister car to this, if you like. You can see that I'm trying to adjust something as I'm driving on this touchscreen. It is a little bit dodgy. We've also got the sounds of nature built in, which is quite cool actually. Tried that sitting in the car the other day, and we just had the rainforest sounds on, and it was quite relaxing. The sound system I've got in here isn't the Bose one, but it is still pretty good, and you've got some good EQ control as well. So at the moment I am just wafting along, and overall it's soft enough that I think you would really be happy for long journeys. And of course you've got fast charging, so long journeys are possible in this car. And my driving position, as I say, I'm really happy with. Of course, if you go for the larger wheels, it's going to be a little bit more firm, and if you want something a little bit more sporty, then an EV6 might be up your street. Now, in terms of the overall kind of feel of where I'm sitting, I do prefer the Genesis GV60, but I think the styling of this is better. And of course, this is a more affordable car as well. The EV6 does feel a little bit cheaper in terms of materials on the inside, but I do prefer the ergonomics of it and the way the screens kind of wrap around you. Also, there's some more physical controls for the climate controls, which I absolutely love. So it's quite a hard choice between all of these platform of cars, and I'm really keen to see where the Kia EV3 slots into this lineup as well. So I'm in eco mode at the moment, and it's quite unresponsive in this mode. If I switch back to normal, it's what I drive in most of the time. And you've got the paddles here which will adjust the level of regen braking. So I normally leave it on level 1, which is very kind of a minor effect. If you leave it on level 0, it basically freewheels so that you drive it like a normal car. You've also got level 2, and then level 3, and then you've got iPedal mode. And so I've gone down to iPedal mode now, and iPedal is basically like a Tesla where it's one pedal driving. As soon as I let off, the car starts to brake, so that's really nice to use in traffic. Personally, I don't like driving it like that day to day. I leave it in level 1, which means I can drive it pretty much like a normal car. But it's really great to be able to have that on the fly adjustment with the paddles, and I love that across all of their range of electric cars. You get the same thing on the Genesis and the Kias as well. I think overall it is the best way to adjust these on the fly. There's no faffing about in the menus. Even though a lot of the stuff is done through the touchscreen, that is something that I can do easily with a touch of one button, and I love that. So I'm going to start doing a little bit more sort of country driving now. I'm going to get it down some more intricate roads and see what it's made of. So you're pottering around town. It's a lovely thing. It's nice, easy size to place, nice and smooth. I can go into iPedal mode and just use a single pedal while I'm in traffic. It's lovely and relaxing. Right, let's go for an uphill pull here. And that's like on a really big incline as well. It's not bad going. Let's change it into sport mode. Sport mode really sharpens the throttle response. In terms of the texture through the wheel, I can feel a bit of the road, but it's not, I wouldn't describe it as really engaging. Yeah, there's not an awful lot of body roll, but there's definitely a bit of a delay to the steering input, which can feel a bit sketchy when you're pushing it really hard. Pulls really nicely though. Again, the brakes are a bit of an area of concern for me when doing spirited driving. Like, they don't feel spongy, they feel quite good to be fair. Relatively reassuring for an electric car, especially with like decent regen braking. But you can feel the weight of the car completely. I definitely would feel a little bit more confident on this road in a Kia EV6, but I'm not sure it's worth the trade-off for the sort of firmer ride overall when you're just cruising along, to be fair. It's one of those cars, you wouldn't buy it primarily for this spirited driving, but it's just nice to know that when you want to get out on a country road and give it some beans, it is happy to comply. is quick. And I love that you can turn the traction fully off and start getting it to kick out a little bit on you as well. Like it feels so playful when you do that, despite its weight. Whoa. So the IONIQ 5 then, I do really think it is worthy of the awards it's been given, and I think it is one to consider when looking at a sort of mid-sized family car to haul people around in. It's really practical, this one, and although there are some trade-offs, including that shallow boot floor and just some of the kind of fiddly tech in here, I think overall it's a nice package with lots of nice tech. Just be careful how you spec it. I wish it had some physical climate controls. I think that would really improve the overall feel of the cabin. And whilst it's not the most exciting place to sit, everything is relatively practical and the tech is all very reliable and easy to use. And personally, I would make sure to spec the blind spot cameras and the 360 parking camera if you can. Yes, the IONIQ 6 is a nicer drive, but it is less practical. And we are starting to see some of the other brands now coming in with a longer range as well. So it's just something to bear in mind. But overall, as a package, I think this is really good. And if you can get a good deal on it, then it's definitely one to highly consider. It's definitely up there with some of the nicest EVs I've had to live with on a day-to-day basis. And if you're after something just a little bit bigger than this even, maybe look at the Skoda ENQUIRIES, which is quite a good all-rounder as well. If you want to check out the rival cars, I've got reviews of pretty much all of them on the channel now, so do check those out. And if you want to lease one of these, check out my lease loco, links in the description for the best deals that are currently on the market. So thanks to Hyundai for sending me out the car. Thanks to you guys for tuning in and all your likes, comments, subscriptions, all that good stuff. It really goes a long way. I do appreciate it. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.